All right, everybody, let's get into this. We're going to go over what in the world is a bicep tendon complex. I found myself more than once this week telling my clients, hey, this is no big deal. This shoulder thing you have, we can work on this. We do this all the time. It's called a bicep tendon complex. Now, you're not going to be able to YouTube a bicep tendon complex. You're not going to be able to Google a bicep tendon complex. It's kind of my name for what we use in the office. It just kind of explains how one thing causes the next and it leads on and goes here and here. So I thought, man, I got to record this thing. I've got this YouTube channel anyway. Why is this not in here? So let's go through it. We call it a bicep tendon complex. Oftentimes I will call it an anterior humeral head complex. Now, a lot of you guys don't know how I present when I go and do my lectures, but I tend to present through a system of the ways I do it. So I'm going to give you the presentation, how the patient comes in with it or what you might be feeling, a distinguishing test, something that makes it really easy to see like, hey, is this what I've got going on? And then the treatments and the protocols and that stuff and what might be the fake outs that go with it. So that's what we're going to go over. Bicep tendon tends to come like this. This is very typical in athletes with overhead throwing motions. So think baseball, softball, swimming, lacrosse, that kind of stuff. If you're a baseball or softball player and you're a third baseman or a shortstop and you're throwing the ball to first and you notice that that ball's got kind of a natural curve to it where it heads out towards right field, that's typically what you've got. Now the pain, a lot of times there's not a lot of pain, but it'll be kind of through the shoulder. And when I ask people, where do you feel it? It's not like, bang, right here. You know, I fell and I hurt it right here. It's kind of more this like, it covers like 4 or 5 different muscles. A lot of times you may get to where you feel it right in the like, that groove for the bicep tendon. So if you look at Bonesy here, Bonesy has this little groove that bicep tendon should fit in. That's the long head bicep tendon. And a lot of times that tendon itself will roll medially. It kind of comes out of its little groove. And that's what we named it for because that's one of the clinical presentations. Now, that might not be where you're feeling it. This can be a combination of feeling it in the front side. Usually you can tell that your pec is too tight. It can be the back side where the muscles are real tight there. And typically you'll feel like it's longer. Now, you also, as an athlete and someone, especially if you're lean, you may notice when you walk out of the shower that you just feel like one shoulder's kind of hanging down or it's rolled forward a little bit because that's what happens. Basically, the mechanism of this injury is this. You've got some sort of shoulder trouble. Now, it's not bad. You can still play with it. I just talked about third baseman and shortstops. They're still in the games playing with this thing, but they've got trouble. Well, the pec wants to cover for that. Think of the old days when someone hurt their shoulder and they put them in a sling, right? They get in a shoulder sling. Now, we know that's a bad idea. You don't want to put a sling on a shoulder because it's a super mobile joint. It's supposed to move around and you've just minimized the motion. But the pec wants to kind of create decreased stress, so it tends to tighten down anyway. And when that tightens down, it pulls your collarbone down. It pulls your shoulder forward like this. Now, the muscles in the front, especially the pec, are the ones doing the pulling. So they are tight because the muscle is too short. But on the back side here, the muscles are now going to be too long. They're overstretched. They're also tight, but I want that to make sense. You can have muscles that are too tight because they're short and muscles that are too tight because they're long. And when I do it as my lectures, I typically show it like a bicep. Like, that's a tight bicep, but that's a tight bicep. So just feeling is stuff tight, that's not good enough. And that's the biggest thing with this bicep tendon complex. Even if you find someone that can work on this thing, if it's a chiropractor and they're just popping joints, it's not good enough. If it's a physical therapist or a chiropractor or physio and they're just doing muscle stuff, that's not good enough. If they're just coming in here with tools and releasing fascia, not good enough. If they're just saying, take some ibuprofen and rest for 6 months, get to a different office. The idea with this bicep tendon complex is you have to do a lot of different things. And that's why we created our own name, because doing one thing by itself is not going to happen. It's not going to work. The most distinguishing test I have on this is that all the orthopedic tests are fine. There's nothing that you can test or that your orthopedic surgeon can test or any good therapist or provider can test that shows a real positive. Rotator cuff strong, glenohumeral joint strong, the labrum strong, everything tests good. Then why is my shoulder hanging? Why do I have this problem? There is a test that will sometimes show positive that I call the shoulder rock test. You go across your body, grab the other shoulder, and just raise up. And you can see, you should easily be able to get your elbow above your eyebrows. And then you check the other side, and it goes about that far, and you're like, no, that's where I feel it. I call that the shoulder rock test, or some other names depending on what school you went to. If the shoulder rock test is positive, you almost for surely have this thing. All right? What we want to do is you want to understand that mechanism. So if the front side muscles are too short and tight, we need to loosen these up. I don't care how you release those things or what your therapist or doctor does. You want to get in there and work this thing out so that these muscles are loose. Now the muscles on the back side are often mistreated. You actually want to contract these muscles. These muscles need to be shorter. And when you have someone that's had the bicep tendon for a while, or if you've had it for a while, you will notice typically on like back days at the gym that you're working out a lot or doing a lot of reverse stuff, you feel a lot better the next day because you've just shortened those muscles and it puts that shoulder back in the right groove. So the muscle application is very, very important. In the sports world, we call loosening the muscles up down-regulating. So down-regulate the muscles that are too short. Up-regulate the muscles that are too long. Get them contracting back. That'll tend to want to get that shoulder back in the right position. Check for a posterior shoulder adhesion. So if you're a physio, a chiropractor, physical therapist, athletic trainer, check for that posterior capsule adhesion because you can sometimes find that on there. If you're at a chiropractor's office or a PT's office or a physio, or athletic trainer, we want to mobilize that shoulder back in the right position. Typically when that pec pulls so tight, it pulls that shoulder forward. So we want to mobilize that thing back. I'm not going to tell you guys how to do this on that video. There's a lot of chiropractic pop videos out there. You know I don't like that stuff. You guys do what your profession's for. If you're an athlete that has this, you have to find someone else that can go through this mechanism. I'm also doing this video so I can explain it to my clients. So when they say, hey, what did you do for me again? They can come back and review this thing. You have to set the bicep tendon. So you'd grab the inside and set it out. Basically, you're taking the bicep tendon and it has to go from medial to lateral. Feel that tendon. The medial tendon will also go inside. So you've got two bicep tendons. You want to check them both out. This is the one we want to do. And then you want to follow up the agenda. So if you think it's inflamed, go with some ice. If you think it's just muscle stuff, you might want to go with heat. Now, what are some DDXs or mimicking conditions that can go with this? Well, it's often comes to my office where someone says, hey, my trainer or my doctor says I've got tendonitis. I've got a bicep tendonitis. That's a kind of half-assed answer, all right? I mean, I'll give you partial credit for it if you're taking one of my classes because the tendon is getting irritated because it's not sitting in its groove, but that by itself isn't good enough. It's not just a tendonitis issue. In the sports world, in my era, we used to call it like a hanging shoulder. Like, hey, coach, I want to go out and play center field. My shoulder's kind of hanging today. Make sure the cutoff comes out farther. Right? It's just this tired, it doesn't work the right way. If you've had it for a long time and you're trying to do an overhead throwing motion, you almost kind of feel like you're shot putting it, you know, and that's, you'll notice when you have this thing that's not just sitting right. There's a lot of other things it can be, but for the most part, if you're at your doctors or your practitioners, they're ruling out anything else. This is the condition in the absence of any positive testing, okay? It could also be a rib subluxation. If you take a deep breath in and you're like, oh my gosh, it's right here, I can't take a breath in. It's a whole different game. We'll do that video another time. Now here's the cool thing with the bicep tendon. It almost always is 100% rectified in 2 visits. What I tell my clients is, come on in here, we're gonna do all the work. You're gonna walk out feeling a ton better. Your rock test is gonna go right back to where it's supposed to be. But give it about 4 or 5 days and it's gonna feel like it comes back again. I've been doing this for a long time. It almost always takes 2 visits. So plan on it getting really good, kind of coming back to where it was again. Set it the second time. It's good for months and months. Now, if you're a professional college athlete, high level in high school, and you're doing a ton of overhead stuff, if you're a swimmer and you're doing freestyle and you're doing like 5,000 every day for like your warm-ups and you're put, you know, I mean, a lot of swimmers go a lot of extra life. You may have this happen a little bit more recurrent during season. Don't worry about it. This isn't a condition that is a dangerous injury type condition. The reason I call it the bicep tendon complex is because there's a lot of things going on. Not the complexity. It's a very simple fix, but it's not good enough to just do one thing and say, hey, I adjusted your back or neck. You're going to be fine. It doesn't work like that. Now you know the bicep tendon complex. You guys got this. Make your performance better. Become better athletes. If you need to learn more about this or want to know more, this is the way I do a lot of my online seminars. I just get right to the heart of it, show you what's going on, and we get it going. I hope you guys learned a little bit. If you've got this thing, get to someone, fix this up. Take care. You just finished another rehab to go. I know you learned something. If you want to know when the next one's coming out so you can be ready for it, all you got to do is subscribe. Hit the little bell, it'll ding and tell you, hey, Chad's got another one coming out. Don't forget to tell your friends, especially those that are like-minded, the kids, the students that are getting into this industry. They know what direction they want to go, but no idea how to get there. This information helps them make those decisions. Look forward to seeing you guys next time.